I'm talking about A Force for Good, which is a book by Daniel Goleman based on the Dalai Lama's vision for the world, vision for our world. And I'm going to be talking about it for the next 2 months. Brace yourselves. So here's the deal. The Dalai Lama resigned his position as the political leader of Tibet. And he did that in 2011. But he has remained the spiritual leader of Tibet. And actually he has become a spiritual leader for the world. He has expanded his congregation, if you will. And I think that it's important for us to remember that good comes from all things. And when he was exiled from Tibet, that was such a good thing for the world. And it was hard for the Tibetan people, of course, and it was hard for him. But if he had not done that, if he had not left Tibet, we would never have heard of him. We would never have known who the Dalai Lama is or was. So he's moved into a world arena rather than a limited arena that he was brought into. He was found as the Dalai Lama when he was 4 years old. And then he was groomed to take that position when he was 16. And then he was 24 when he was exiled into India. So he is certainly someone who is able to talk about hardship and difficulties. His life has not been easy. So there are so many lessons that we can learn from him. But his vision for A Force for Good is based on 8 tenets, and I'm going to read them to you, and then each week we're going to address one of those. So today we're going to talk about the beginning of A Force for Good is caused by a calm and clear mind. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Also, the tenet of embodying compassion, educating the heart, opposing injustice, choosing humane economics, and offering support, ways to heal the earth, and connect across divides. So, as I mentioned, he has had many opportunities to know anger, grief, and disappointment. And he says that up until he was like 16 to 21, he had horrendous bursts of anger. But over the years, he has learned to modify that. So he's in his 80s now. Is turning 80. But the thing about it is to begin to become a force for good. He sees that each one of us must learn how to have a calm and clear mind, because each one of us contributes to the larger collective consciousness of the world. So he says the changes he envisions must begin with a willingness to transform our own minds by weakening the pull of our destructive emotions and strengthening our better natures. Without that inner shift, we stay vulnerable to the old knee-jerk behaviors of rage, frustration, fear, and hopelessness. He, because of his position now and traveling throughout the world, realizes that this is a world of interdependence. We are all enmeshed in the problems of the world, as we are all enmeshed in the solution for the problems of the world. And each one of us counts. Each one of our independent thinking process counts toward bringing the force for good into the world. No kidding. So he envisions humanity embodying a way that of being and perceiving that upends many of the values that's rampant today. He envisions a world more caring and compassionate. Is this annoying to you?
Yes.
Yes. Sure.
My shawl? Okay. All right, now I'm going to get organized here.
That's good. Go for it.
Okay. So he understands that this vision goes beyond wishful thinking, and he offers pragmatic antidotes for what we urgently need in this world to bring about the force for good. And I want to mention that truly his message and Ernest Holmes' message are so deeply entwined. And I'm going to just share with you that vision that Ernest Holmes had when he gave his Sermon by the Sea. I'm going to just share brief statements around that. And it was the last talk that Ernest Holmes ever gave, and it so closely aligns with the Dalai Lama's vision for the world. So Ernest Holmes said this: "Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of burden of his soul, and I will find an exalted human being. Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight. Find me one person who has given all that he has in love, without morbidity, and I will have found the love of my soul. Is not this true? Why? Because he will have revealed to me the nature of God and proved to me the possibility of all human souls. Find me one person who can get his own littleness out of the way, and he shall reveal to me the immeasurable magnitude of the universe in which I live. Find me someone who is no longer sad, whose memory has been redeemed from morbidity, and I shall hear laughter. Find me someone whose song is really celestial, because it is the outburst of the cosmic urge to sing, and I shall hear the music of the spheres. Find me someone who has detached his emotional and psychological ego from the real self, without having denied the place to play in the scheme of things, and without slaying any part of himself, because of the transcendence there also. And I will have discovered the inevitable in the individual and a direct pathway for the communion of my own soul." So the Dalai Lama is actually totally in alignment with this concept. And that is that as we recognize that we are celestial beings, that we are God in action, as we are powerful beyond measure as individuals, we actually are touching the whole entire planet and bringing a force for good. So as the weeks progress, we're going to talk more about the Dalai Lama's vision for a world that works for everyone, which is CSL's stated moral code. So the first step, according to the Dalai Lama, is to take responsibility to better manage our own minds and emotions, what he calls emotional hygiene. Says that we have body hygiene, we should also have emotional hygiene. He says that calmness alone is not a sufficient antidote. We need also to nurture a caring heart, lest we simply withdraw into a self-satisfied cocoon of calmness. The type of calm he sees in compassion mixes with a lucid mind and an armed heart. So that being quiet and being still is not enough. It's not sufficient, because we can sit on a mountaintop, as so many think that monks do, without any action and just meditate and expect all good. It is important for us to cleanse our mind of all of our negative beliefs and our old ideas of pain and upset, and allow ourselves to come to the place that we empathize and understand on a deeper level all human suffering, all human pain. And he says that he talks about a universal ethic, which is based on the oneness of humanity and is best expressed as compassion toward all. That perspective will cause us to figure out better ways of holding accountable toxic social forces like corruption, collusion, and bias. He has a vision for businesses doing good even as they do well. He encourages us to make sure our brains are not too stuck or too rigid. We need to constantly question wisdom that we believe and hidden assumptions. Taking the time to evaluate our belief system. Why do we believe the things that we believe? Why is it that we have and hold our values? Taking a look at them, examining them, seeing if they are still what we choose to believe in, or are they like the ham that gets cut off the end generation after generation after generation, because that's the way our mother did it. Come to find out, our mother had a pan that wouldn't hold the whole ham. So we need to take a look at those old belief systems and talk about what is worth holding on to. What is it that we value the most? And let's see, I talked about him leaving Tibet in 2008, the communists invaded Tibet and killed thousands of people, many of them monks. And he applied emotional hygiene techniques for dealing with that catastrophe. And he did that by thinking of the communists and holding his heart open in love, breathing in the anger, the pain, the destruction, and breathing out love, and breathing out love. He says that wouldn't solve the problem necessarily, but it was an immense help in keeping his mind calm. So this meditative practice is called Tonglen. And in that practice, the meditator breathes in another's pain, holds it, and then breathes out love and peace and harmony. So that's one of the techniques that he suggests that we use for mental, emotional hygiene. To take the things that we find distressing, the circumstances and the situations that we find distressing, and rather than resisting them, rather than pushing them away from us, allowing ourselves to be open to them, to breathe them in, to mix them with love and with compassion, and breathe them out. And this is a practice that I have resisted personally. I have always thought, I don't want all of that stuff hanging around inside me. Don't like it. However, it does give us a different perspective, and it gives us an opportunity to be in compassion for those things and those people that we resist. So I would suggest that you try it just by simply breathing in the things that you resist, holding them in your heart, and then breathing out love and peace and calm. He says that because he realizes that he has anger, he knows that anger is not only a destructive emotion for spewing out in the world, it is also a destructive emotion for ourselves. That anger is not good for our health. And so when he allows himself to remember that anger is not healthy, it's destructive to our well-being and our physical sense of good hygiene, emotional hygiene, and physical hygiene, that remembering that anger is not good for us is an important part of dealing with life's stressors. The second tool that he suggests, besides Tonglen, is to pay attention to minding our feelings. While we can't always control when we feel angry, what we can do is gain some control over what we do when we're in the grip of anger. And as I mentioned, when he was younger, he really felt angry and had a lot of resistance. You know, when you think about it, his life was not his own life. It was laid out for him. And as a young, dynamic man who had so much curiosity and so much interest in all things, it must have been very difficult for him to have found himself in the position of being the Dalai Lama. So the other thing is to take a situation, look at circumstances, and then perhaps reframing them. There's a story in his book about a researcher whom he's become very close to, Paul Ekman. And Paul Ekman tells the story of how he was with the Dalai Lama, and his wife had traveled somewhere, and she was supposed to call him when she arrived where she was. And Paul Ekman went into this frenzy of concern and then in anger because he hadn't heard from his wife. And the Dalai Lama reminded him that there could have been hundreds of reasons why she had not called, and sort of talked him down from that. Well, come to find out that Paul Ekman's mother had deserted him at an early age. And so when he didn't hear from his wife, it spun him out and took him to all of those early belief systems of feeling abandoned and neglected and unloved, when in fact, his wife just hadn't called. But I think we all have those spin-outs that touch old pains that cause us to flip right back into our early childhood pains and our early feelings of neglect and upset. So Paul Ekman talks about how the Dalai Lama had talked him down from that place of upset and had pointed out to him the reasons and the hows and the whys that his wife couldn't have called. And he talks about how he just finds the Dalai Lama the most enchanting person to be friends with, because he is always finding the humor and the joy and the laughter in every circumstance, in every situation. And when you think about how he could really be a miserable old man, he is certainly not that. There's the old Native American story about two wolves that are battling in my heart. You probably have heard it. There's the wolf that is violent and dangerous, and the other one that's full of warmth and compassion. And an old Native American is talking to his grandson about these two wolves, and the grandson says, well, which one wins? Which one lives? And the older Native American elder says, the one that you feed. And the Dalai Lama takes this story and moves it forward. And he says that that even vicious dogs will behave in a more gentle way if they are with dogs that are calm and serene. And so that's another point of emotional hygiene, and that is to surround ourselves with people who are calm and loving and serene. And it's important to know that we are accepting the tone and the texture of that which we're surrounded by. And so when we are with, you know this to be true, we've all experienced it, when we're around and with angry, negative, cranky people, we have a tendency to become, like them, angry and negative and cranky. But when we surround ourselves with people who are loving, who are compassionate, and who are calm and peaceful, we have a tendency to be more loving, compassionate, calm. And so the Dalai Lama has worked with neuroscientists. He's really a neuroscientist at heart. He's worked with researchers, and they have discovered that simply by exposing people to the idea and the concept of love, that causes them to calm down and be more peaceful and serene. And he says, the researchers, the Paul Ekman that he's been working with, says that just simply seeing the word love, the word love causes people to calm down and to be more peaceful and serene. And also to be treated with affection causes people to become more affectionate. And the Dalai Lama said, this is the third point for emotional hygiene. Affection acts as an antidote to fear. If you show me genuine affection, then automatically I feel this person is kind to me, so I can trust them. If you have no fear, you relax, you feel safe, you feel love, and you give love. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to share about tending to emotional hygiene. Practice Tonglen meditation once more. Taking in any kind of negative, painful, upsetting feelings, breathing them in, and then negating them, neutralizing them from within yourself, and then breathing out love, calm, peace. And because we have a tendency to react to and respond to the feelings that we're surrounded with. This really is part of the force for good. By breathing out love and peace and harmony, we are touching our environment. We're touching other people. So the second practice is minding our feelings, paying attention to what we're thinking, what we're feeling, following that to the very core of where it came up, where it started, and then once more neutralizing them, knowing that that has no truth except the truth that you give it. And the third is surrounding ourselves with love. Loving people, loving feelings, and remembering loving situations and circumstances that we've experienced in our life. So that's step one in our journey for finding the force of good that the Dalai Lama envisions for all of us throughout the world. So, I love you all. I love you. Namaste.
Namaste.
So I invite the practitioners to stand with me and join as we hold this congregation in love. So I breathe in. All of the peace and the harmony that fills this room, and I breathe it out. I know that we, each one present, are surrounded by love, by peace and harmony. Each one of us can make a choice to own this for ourselves, to become a force for good, to become a force for power, peace, and harmony. Each one of us can choose to feed the wolf of love, of warmth, of companionship, of joy. We are the ones that Ernest Holmes was looking for. We are for good and against nothing. We make a choice to be the good that we search for in this world. If each one of us makes that choice and practices emotional hygiene, if each one of us makes a choice to be loving and to be peaceful, that love and that peace will resonate with all others who value love and peace. And we will change the world. That's not an empty, hollow dream. That is a substantial goal that each one of us can own. And because we are the expression of the divine, we are God made manifest. We are the majority. Because God plus you is the majority. It cannot be otherwise. So at this moment, I celebrate the change that I seek, the peace and the harmony and the love and the support and the compassion that is spreading throughout this world. Because I know that that is the truth. It cannot be otherwise. So I invite you to own that with me. I invite you to celebrate the good that's spreading throughout the world. Let's claim it for ourselves by saying, and so it is.